You have no pleasure in me new life anymore, Mom. Those at work we on it took toy race nearly for decade of believing that unconditional love can survive anything. Me song side them queerly over dinner, as if how we commenting on the weather instead of dismantling the hurt of the woman Veducto had raised him. He looked into Michael's eyes, searching for the little boy Veducto who set the room into me arm after every nightmare, but only found was a stranger wearing me song's face. Ashley, his wife, sat beside him with her hands swept around a glass of iced tea. She didn't interrupt. She didn't disagree. She simply allowed her eyes for a moment before taking another sip, as though this conversation had been rehearsed long before he went to the front door. He smiled, not because he wants to hurt, but because he suddenly realized wow changed absolutely nothing. The dining room was beautiful, decorated in soft grey tones with red white flowers arranged neatly in the center of the white table. The scent of rosemary chicken still lingered in the air, until on my plate. Just and how early, he had been grateful for the invitation, believing me someone had to spend a quick Sunday evening with me. It even stopped Peter Baker on my way over and picked up Michael's favorite apple pie, the same recipe had Beckett made to make every Thanksgiving since he was 10 years old. The pie was still sitting in the kitchen, unopened. Funny how quickly something made with love can become invisible. No one spoke after his was settled over the room. The silence stretched so long that it could hear the refrigerator humming from across the house. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. Ashley and I are starting over. New neighbor. New friend. New opportunity. We just think it's better if we have some space. Space. Such a gentle word to describe such a permanent wow. I nodded loud, fold me napkin with steady hands, and play it beside me until dinner plate. I understand, it is size sorry. And some those three words spread on up us. Michael blinked, and most disappointed that he hadn't asked. Ashley glanced at him briefly, as though wondering whether the conversation had ended too easily. He stood, picked up my handbag, and thanked them for dinner. Before leaving, he wandered into the kitchen, flicked the apple pie onto the counter beside coffee maker, and whispered, I hope you enjoy it. Neither of them phun lao mẹ to frang door. The cool evening agreed me as it stepped on the driveway, carrying with it the scent of freshly cooked grass from a neighbor's yard. Family luggage smelled down the street. A little girl just sat booper while her father pretended he called to catch her. Like content as how nothing extraordinary had happened. He sat behind the wheel of my old sedan, resting both hands on the steering wheel while starting the engine. For the first time since my husband Daniel passed away 18 months early, he felt completely alone. Book deep beneath the archer, beneath the display and the quick humiliation, another feeling began to take shape. It was the anger. It was the revenge. It was clarity. Michael believed he had closed the final chapter of my life with a single sentence. He never imagined that his work had only opened the first page of a string neither he nor Ashley was preparatory. Driving home that night, he kept expecting me phone to ring. He imagined Michael calling to say he had spoken out of frustration, that Gray had allowed his young man, that he wanted me to come back and finish the slice of apple pie we had never said. The phone remained silent on the way to Miss Man Colonial House on the edge of town. When he unlocked the front door, the familiar creak echoed through the quick hallway, just as it had for more than 30 years. Daniel always promised he would fix that high somebody, but every time he reached for his toolbox, he would log and tell him he liked hearing it because it sounded like home. Funny how the smallest imperfection become his memory after people with Dr. Creek them are gone. He switched on the kitchen light and set me push on the counter. The house welcomed me with the scent of cedar wood, old books, and the lavender candle he lit every evening since Daniel passed away. Nothing inside those ones had changed, yet everything felt different because he had changed. He poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and stood by the window overlooking the backyard. The maple tree Daniel planted when Michael was born had grown so tall that it branch reached over the fence into the neighbor's yard. Every phone is penetrated in brilliant shade of red and gold. Daniel Uset to say that cheese me look love better than calendar BK kept grow event when no one noticed. Economy ice and Rembeck another Sunday dinner, a mock to early, just before Daniel Shahurquilge out one autumn morning. Michael had loget a room this very kitchen tap while helping his father grow humber. Ashley had come me homemade potato salad and insist on taking leftover home. We play các to nearly midnight, arguing playfully over relax, no one truly care about. Looking back, it really that was last evening our family had farewell. After Daniel's funeral, Evelyn said so gradually that it convinced myself it was marrying it. Michael collect leg obtain, act like that work had become demanding. Ashley apologized for missing holiday vacation we travel or entertain friends. Invitation became shorter, than less frequent, until month passed with nothing more than Brightest message asking whether it was doi alright. Ian Way replied that it was phải vacation more to have a change the habit of protesting the children from Buden, even when those Buden are the out lonely. If you let me days with routine that made the empty house easy to carry. Every Tuesday morning I volunteer at the local library, saving books and reading stories to children was my reminder that that still exists in the world. On Wednesday I baked bread for me elderly neighbor, Missy Harper, was a treat to make kneading yogurt impossible. Friday afternoon we reached for flour from the farmer market, even if I only bought a small bouquet of daisies for the dining room table. I kept living the life Daniel and I had built together BK abandoning it felt like losing him a second time. If summer Bennett those quick routine, thì Nick content to spread. Family photograph disappeared from Michael's social media page, reflect the public image of dinner party, vacatino, and celebrity we never met to belong. At first I assumed they simply forgot to invite me. Then I began to notice something more unstable. They were not forgetting. They were moving forward with a version of life that no longer include me, one cafe and I picked at a time, while I remained in the background wondering exactly when I had become so much so irritated live behind. The following Saturday I worked before sunrise, just as I had for most of me adult life. Our habit have a way of surviving event after the reason for them disappear. I brewed a fat pot of coffee, opened the curtain, and watched the first light spill across the bucket. For a few peaceful minutes, I almost convinced me that everything was phải ít vội back to normal. Then I remembered there was no normal left to return to. Around 9 o'clock, I dropped to the local farmer market. It had become one of the few places where familiar fish to Greek may be named. The flower vendor handed me a bundle of white daisies without asking BK he knew they were my favorite. The baker smiled and slipped an extra cinnamon roll into my bag, saying it reminded him of something his grandmother used to make. Those simple girls carried more warmth than I had felt from me our family in Mon. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store for a few essentials. As I pushed me các the produce setting, I heard someone call me name. It was Linda, an old family friend who had known Michael since he was in elementary school. After a chàng hút, she smiled brightly and asked, "I was surprised not to see you at the house one party last weekend. The picture looked beautiful." For a moment I thought I had missed her. House one party. Last weekend. I forced a police smile and told her I had been busy. She continued chatting, commenting una thác every phone would landed, like another piece of a puro I had been trying not to show. She mentioned the space bucket, the elegant dining room, and how Evelyn had admitted as rich decorating city. Then she casual added, Michael gave such a sweet toast about new beginning. It was touching. I wished her a wonderful afternoon, finished me shopping, and went back to me share with a stranger come settling over me. They had bought a new house. They had invited neighbor, coworker, old friend, and even people I barely knew. Everyone except me. They really Latino hurt, but it answer question I had been carrying for months. This had not been an impulsive decision made over Sunday dinner. It had been unfolding quietly, careful, one small exclamation at a time. Later that evening I found myself opening an old wooden check with Daniel kept family photograph and holiday card. There was no shot from camping trip, birthday, graduation, and counting ordinary afternoon that had once met to ordinary torture. In nearly every picture, Michael stood close me with an arm around my shoulder or a grin that reached his eyes. I wonder what had changed him so completely. Girl, I can raise people, but this felt different. This felt intentional. As I placed the photograph back into the box, an envelope slipped onto the floor. It was etched in Daniel's handwriting, but not Thomas. It simply read, Margaret. I recognized the name immediately. Margaret Brooke had been Daniel's attorney for more than 25 years and one of the few people had trusted without hesitation. I stayed at the envelope for a long moment before setting it fell on the dining room table. I did not open it because I knew it was not mine to read. Instead, I read for my telephone, found Margaret's number in an old other book, and left a brief message asking whether she might have a time for coffee for a week. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. Margaret's voice was warm, steady, and unsuspicious. Evelyn, she sighed gently, I have been hoping you welcome. There is something your husband wanted you to know when the time was right. I think that time has finally arrived. Margaret suggested we met at a quick cafe on the edge of the Tuesday morning. It was a pleasure. Daniel and I had visited counting time after church, with a white student bag exactly how he liked his coffee. When I arrived, Margaret was already sick in a corner book with a little fuller resting neatly beside her. She stood, embraced me warmly, and for a few moments we spoke only about Daniel. We laughed over his terrible joker, his endless collection of neckties, and the way he always insisted on tipping more than annual effect. Those memories is set the tension just enough for me to forget why he had come. Then Margaret gently played the fuller on the top buenos. Daniel loved you very much, she sighed quietly. He and so worried about smithing he could not quite slide. Frauen. Daniel had always been an optimistic man. He believed people eventually chose kindness if they were given enough chances. Hearing that he had carried concern he never shared with me felt almost impossible. Margaret opened the folder and carefully removed several documents. They waited a little more than I before Daniel passed away. He asked me to prepare tests after noticing change in Michael, as she explained. Nothing dramatic. Just something that made him uncomfortable. I listened without interrupting. Margaret continued, I had told me Michael had begun asking some questions about property value, redeem account, insurance policy, and how ownership will transfer in the future. At first Daniel assumed it was simple financial curiosity. But over time, he felt those conversations become less about planning and more about appetite. My hands remained folded in my lap as I absorbed every word. Daniel had never mentioned any of this to me. Margaret seemed to sense me confusion. He did not want you worrying why he was early, as she sighed softly. He hoped he was simply overthinking things. But he believed it was his responsibility to prepare for every possibility. She slipped one document toward me. It outlined the ownership of our family home, our savings, and several investments Daniel had built over decades of cafe work. Everything was exactly as I remembered discussing with him, except for one important detail. The final authority over every significant financial decision remained with me. Nothing can be sold, transfer, refinance, or permanent risking without me written approval. Margaret looked dicily into my eyes. Your husband believed you well and we make decisions based on feelings instead of pressure. I felt a lump rise in me throat. Daniel had trusted me even after he was gone. Margaret reached for another document. Yes, something else you shall know. A few months ago Michael contacted me office asking general questions about transferring family assets. I declined to discuss anything because I resent your late husband's estate, not your song. Me hurt best loud instead of quicken. Oddly and now, he did not feel angry anymore. He fell away. Small moment from the past 2 years suddenly fit together with uncomfortable precision. The reduction can low. The police distance. The new house he had never been invited to see. The conversation over dinner. None of it had appeared overnight. It had been building quietly while it continued believing Pattin's scout reply was silencer was loud destroy. Margaret closed her folder and read one hand gently over mine. Evelyn, I am not telling you this so you will fight with your song. I am telling you because you need to understand your position before anyone else tries to define it for you. I nodded loud and slipped the document back into the folder without saying another word. As I wandered out of the cafe into the crisp afternoon air, I realized something important. For weeks I had been asking myself why my song had pushed me out of his life. Now I was asking a different question entirely. Why had he assumed I would quietly surrender everything else as well? When I returned home, I did not feel the urge to call Michael or demand an explanation. That surprised even me. For I believe every family problem can be solved with one honest conversation, but I have finally learned that conversation only matters when both people are willing to hear the truth. Instead, I placed Margaret's folder inside the same wooden cabin with Daniel Usek to keep our most important paper. Then I made myself another cup of chamomile tea and sat on the back porch, watching a pile of blueberries build a nest beneath the old map tree. They worked patiently, carrying one tiny toy at a time. They never rushed. They never looked back to see whether anyone appreciated their effort. There was something comforting about that quick determination. Over the next several days, I continued living easily as I always had. I volunteered at the library. I bought fresh flour on Friday afternoon. I baked banana bread for Missy. Harper after she mentioned her grandchildren were visiting for a weekend. From the outset, nothing about my life up different. That was exactly how I wanted it. I did not put emotional message online. I did not complain to friends. I did not try to gather sympathy from relatives. Silence can be surprisingly powerful when it comes from peace instead of fear. Late Tuesday afternoon, my telephone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen for the first time since our dinner together. I answered with the same calm voice I will have used any other day. He sounded unusually cheerful. He asked about my health, the weather, and whether I had been keeping busy. The conversation felt strangely real, as how we were both reading different scripts. After a few minutes, he finally read the reason for his call. Ashley and he were organizing some financial paperwork connect to their new home, and there were a few family documents they hoped I cao sinh. He asked like Evelyn will make future planning much easier for Evelyn. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I simply said that I will be happy to review any document with me at Tony before signing them. The silence on the other end of the line lasted several seconds longer than it should have. Michael clicked his watch and replied that hearing law was probably unnecessary because we were family. It's my event how he cannot see me. Daniel and we believe important decisions deserve careful attention, he answered gently. I think he was right. Michael quickly changed the subject before ending the call. The moment I placed my phone back on the table, I knew Margaret had been correct. This was never about rebuilding a relationship. It was about gaining access to something they believed will eventually become they. The following morning I met Margaret once again. We reviewed every document connected to Daniel's estate, every account, every property record, and every instruction he had left behind. Nothing required immediate action, but Margaret suggested updating a few administrative details to ensure me wise weekly document moving forward. I agreed without hesitation. It was not an asset of punishment. It was an asset of responsibility. Daniel had spent a lifetime protesting our family through thoughtful planning. Now it was me turn to protect what remained of the value we had built together. As he left her office, he noticed a text message waiting from Michael. It read, let us know when you can stop being next week. We have everything ready. He looked at those words for a long moment before slipping me phone back into me push. Thầy believed they were inviting me to help complete their plan. They had no idea it was about to discover exactly what those plans truly were. Therefore Wednesday afternoon, he dropped to Michael and Ashley's new house exactly as we had arranged. The neighbor was quick, lined with young map trees and neatly trimmed lawn stack on cement to compact for professional. Light front pocket display matching Sironan Wurik, and children drove visual along the sidewalk while neighbor waved to one another. It was the king of pleasure Daniel would have admit, and for a brief moment he understood why Michael had been surprised to move here. Ashley opened the front door with a breast might have felt warmer than it had in months. She hugged me lightly and complimented me blue cardigan before leading me into the living room. Michael, after a moment later carrying 3 cups of coffee, had spoke with an enthusiasm that reminded me of the song he once knew, asking about my volunteer work and whether the maple tree in my bucket was still standing after the recent storm. The conversation felt almost normal, with beneath every pleasant sentence essential cafe preparation. After several minutes, Ashley disappeared into the home office and returned carrying a neatly organized folder. Michael played it on the coffee table and was with an encouraging smile. These are just routine documents, he had explained. Nothing complicated. Our financial advisor said it would be easier if everything was organic now instead of later. He looked down at the stack of paper without touching them. The first few pages contain familiar legal language regarding future property planning, financial authority, and estate coordination. Then he noticed several clauses that clearly expanded decision-making authority beyond what Michael had described over the telephone. Certain approval will eventually allow change to a second net with me estate if specific circumstances arose. They had presented everything as ordinary family planning, but the wording carried for greater consequence than a casual explanation suggests. He slowed closed the folder and found me hands in my lap. Neither Michael nor Ashley spoke. They were waiting for me signature. Instead, he smiled gently and sighed, "I appreciate the time you both spent preparing this document." Daniel and with the good method every page careful, and Margaret has offered to review anything involving legal matter before issuing. Ashley's smile faded and more imperceptible. Michael leaned forward and looked softly, attempting to keep the conversation light. "Mom, that really is not necessary." Margaret handed just paperwork ago. "This is content different." He made his eyes scanly. "If it is content different, then another review shall not create any problem." The room became noticeably quieter. Outside, a lawnmower who makes summer down the street while sunlight filtered through the living room windows. Michael glanced toward Ashley before looking back at me. "We were only trying to make things easier for you," he had said. "I know that. I believe that is what you wanted me to think." Those words lingered and was without anger or accusation. Ashley quietly gathered paper and returned them to the folder. "No one asked. No one raised a voice. We finished our coffee discussing ordinary subjects like weather forecast and neighbor restaurant, but the warm that greeted me when I had disappeared completely. As it stood to leave, Michael wanked me to front porch. For a moment he looked as though he wanted to say something honest, something that might break the distant between us. Instead, he simply wished me as a drive home. I smiled, thanked him for the coffee, and stepped into my chair. As he fastened my seatbelt, my telephone vibrated with a new message from Margaret. She had completed an additional review of Daniel's record that morning and discovered something neither Michael nor Ashley knew existed. She asked me to come by her office first thing the next day because the final piece of Daniel's plan was ready to be revealed. The next morning I arrived at Margaret's office just as the clock struck 9. She greeted me with the same steady smile, but this time there was an unmistakable of purple in her episode. Writing on the confirmed tab was a single sealed envelope with Daniel's handwriting across Frank. Margaret Caffell slipped it toward me without saying a word. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a short letter written only a few months before had passed away. Daniel's family was summoned to the room. He wrote that if he was reading the letter, it meant like had moved forward without him, and he hoped our family had remained close. But he also admitted that, during his final year, he had begun noticing small changes in Michael's priority. He emphasized that people can lose their way without becoming evil, especially when ambition, fear, or austic influence cloud their judgment. That was why he had clearly created additional legal protesting, not to punish our son, but to ensure that no important decision will ever made through pressure, guilt, or manipulation. When I finished reading, tears red in my eyes, yet they were not tears of heartbreak. They were tears of gratitude. Even in his absence, Daniel had found one final way to protect me. Margaret opened another folder and outlined what she had discovered during her review. Yearly, Daniel had played our family home and several investments into a cafe structure estate and that cannot be entered without Mildred approval and independent legal review. Any document attempting to be packed requiem will have no effect. In other words, every paper Michael and Ashley had asked me to depended entirely on my voluntary consent. Without it, nothing changed. I sat quietly for a long moment, allowing the weight of that truth to settle. The fear that had followed me for weeks now disappeared. It had not been powerless. It had simply been unaware of the strength Daniel had already played in my hands. Before leaving, I asked Margaret one question. Shall I confront Michael? She paused before answering. Only if your goal is understand. If your goal is forcing someone to become the person you wish they were, no conversion can accomplish that. Her words stayed with me during the drive home. That evening, a station depended behind the mapetry Daniel had planted so many years before, my telephone rang once again. It was Michael. His voice sounded careful, and most unsettling, as he asked whether he had reviewed the paperwork. He answered hastily. Yes. Margaret and I reviewed every page. Silence followed. Then he quickly asked whether he intended tossing. He looked out the kitchen window at the tree was look had grown deeper with every passing season. No, Michael, I replied gently. I will not sing document I do not fully believe in. He tried to explain that everything had been misunderstood, that they were only planning for a future, but I did not. I simply listened until he finished. Then I said something I had finally come to understand myself. Real family did not ask for trust after hiding the truth. Real family protect trust before it is ever questioned. Another long silence settled when us before her beside Guppy. After the call ended, I placed Daniel's letter back into its envelope and returned it to the wooden cabin where we had and we kept the most valuable thing in our life. Not because it represents money or property, but because it reminded me that love without wisdom can become vulnerability, while love without wisdom become lasting protection. For the first time in many months, I no longer felt abandoned. I felt free to move forward with dignity, carrying Daniel's memory behind me and knowing that whatever Michael made next will belong to him alone, while the peace I had finally reclaimed will belong to me.